Alright, good day everyone. So I am here to talk to you about the product sustainability for global talent. I am I am Ram Martinez, your GFB chair, and I am here to talk to you about this session. So the summary is introduction, current reality and numbers, how to improve, long-term sustainability analysis, and final message. So just to have a quick intro, what is product sustainability? When revenues of the product are higher than its related costs, your product is profitable. So it's basically mean that level 0 means revenues is lower than direct costs, meaning creating a loss. Product revenues is higher than direct costs if it's level 1, and level 2 if the revenues is higher than direct costs plus indirect costs. Now this is a sample of how does it look as a level 2. So if your direct cost is higher, if your direct cost, such as here in total IGT cost is $140, and then IGT indirect cost is $100, and then IGT revenue is $270, then that means 270 minus 240 is equals to $30. But why are we supposed to talk about this one? If your product is unsustainable, that means every amount being invested into the product goes to a loss. If your product is growing disruptively and remains unsustainable, this growth would lead to losing money disruptively. If your product will stay unsustainable and keep growing, this could lead to bankruptcy. Now, as you can see, of course, it makes sense because we want to make our product sustainable. We want our products to be able to maintain itself. We want the entire organization to be able to operate as freely and less worry-free as possible. And if the product is growing disruptively and remains unsustainable, then it wouldn't make sense for us to have higher volume of numbers, but we keep on losing every time that we gain those numbers. We don't want to lose the numbers. Like, we want to maintain the ideal optimal financial situation but still be able to grow. And if we keep on this path of losing money because of gaining more numbers, then we better just be bankrupt anyway. Now, how do I know? Sustainability is achieved when the business is able to deliver services to the customers at a price that covers their expenses and generates a profit. Costs incurred for operating the products and maintaining the business is well funded by core revenue is called value for organization. Manpower for functioning and delivering services is efficient and satisfactory, is for value for members, and then price of the product is worth it to the customers and willing to spend for it would be value for market. If these three values would intertwine, so that means you had achieved a sustainable product. However, let's take a look at a negative perspective. So if the direct cost is greater than price, that means there's a negative margin. If indirect cost is greater than the margin, even if the margin is positive, then there is a loss after indirect cost. And if the main activity is not equal to the main income stream, that means there is a poor comparison between division of people and division of margins, then there is low efficiency. So we want to have a pricing for GT. A sample of the negative perspective is that pricing for GT isn't high enough. Slow conversion from acceptance to approval would also mean slow efficiency of the members, would also mean as slow revenue generation, and fixed costs cannot be covered by the profit margin. This would mean that we are going to be unsustainable if these things happen, or even equivalent samples of these things would happen. Now let's go over to the current reality of the numbers. GT product sustainability in a global perspective is that IGT as of August 2018 means we are losing we have negative 0.02, while OGT is positive 0.35. This means that in every euro spent in IGT, we lose 2 cents, while for every euro spent in OGT, we earn 35 cents. This makes OGT the most profitable product globally. Now let's take a look in a regional sense. Regionally, IGT Americas has the only loss across all of the regions, with negative 0.17 compared to other regions with earnings per euro invested. Meanwhile, for OGT, Americas and Middle East and Africa are the top 2 highest gain, reaching nearly 0.50, which is more than twice compared to the other regions. So if you're going to take a good comparison here, in terms of IGT, it's only Americas who got a negative, and then if you're going to look at the global, it also got negative. So that means the amount that Americas is losing is actually greater than all of the other regions, to the point that it dragged the entire global level to negative 0.2. Meanwhile, for the OGT, Americas and MEA have the highest gain. And then Asia Pacific and Europe is only around 0.2 and 0.18. Now let's talk about how to improve. Now let's make sure everything will be legal. So that means you need to have national policies, you need to have rules and regulations when operating the product, make sure everything is organized, and make sure everything is followed. Visas and/or working permits, learn the procedures when supporting acquisition for these documents for the customers. Contracts management, ensure that there is contract and/or agreement between the entity and the stakeholders. And insurance compliance, make sure that the EPs have insurance as per required. So because we are doing exchange and we are dealing with multiple foreign policies, we need to, of course, comply with them. We don't want to risk any legal risks or legal issues, and we want everyone to be safe and healthy. Budgeting. Early and precise budgeting will pave the foundation when it comes to operating the products. Meaning, if you had a good budget, it's a lot easier on how to manage the products. Connecting to the customer flow. Define all activities needed to conduct throughout the whole customer flow. Budgeting is not only about the standards delivery, but should also count from raising opportunities to impact measurement/brand advocacy. Back up with data. Make sure that you have estimated costs based on research and past data. If you don't have the past data or the past budget, then do a research. If you don't have a good research, then you could say that the numbers that you did would potentially be a false assumption or an issue that is poorly conceived. Indirect cost. Discuss with your VPF how much indirect cost every exchange should cover. Also, create a target profit. Determine how much surplus you want to have from every exchange. Pricing. So make sure that the price would be able to fully cover the indirect and direct costs. Repricing. Check out the tools that GFB has and do market research for it. Then fee structure. Connect the way you structure your charge, the way you charge, to what is suitable for the partners. Delivery of the service. Charging can be one-time payment, monthly servicing fees, a combination of one-time payment and monthly servicing fees, or even multiple fixed installments. Multiple fixed installments means that it's almost the same as monthly servicing fees. However, it's different periods, like it can be quarterly or it can be every 6 months. Cost cutting. Cost cutting is small spending comes a long way. Strategic alliances can be a part of cost cutting, where you are finding partners to be able to provide you with logistics, training, implementation. So this is one of those partnerships that This is one of those partnerships that would allow you to have lesser costs. Like this is usually a discounted version. In-kind sponsorships is non-monetary support such as food, welcome packages, promotions, free press, and of course constant tracking. If it's not measured, it's not managed. You need to have regular reporting and meetings, to have regular discussions with your VPF to discuss the current status of product profitability. You can only improve your product profitability if you are aware of the state. Now, let's talk about long-term sustainability analysis. So this is a tool that for you to check out long-term sustainability. Let's go to the tool itself. Alright, so in this tool, you can see, you can use this to be able to play out how can you plan in the long run in terms of cash flow, and thus be able to have an easier overview of what you wanted to happen in the next few months, next few years. For example, so this is just for example's sake, everything that are in white are actually the parts where you should write your inputs. So real values, meaning these are the values that are already done. So for example, 1617 and 1718. So just write down the numbers that you have in there. So from approvals to product pricing to direct cost breakdown, then indirect and other cost breakdown, and then direct revenues breakdown, then indirect revenues breakdown. So these are numbers that of course pretty much comprises a budget. Now, once you fill that out in 1617 and 1718, you can see on the top is a cash flow version in 16, 17, 18, and multiple years to come. So you can see the cash flow of adding direct exchange revenue, indirect revenue, then direct costs, indirect costs. So which would have total revenue and total cost. And then in this table, the one from rows 12 to 14 is a cash flow tables, which would have beginning balance, net profit / net loss, and then ending balance. So this is actually a running balance. So for example, if you started with 700,000, then the net profit and loss is negative 134, then ending balance would be 365, and then the 565 would then be carried over for the beginning balance of 1718. So that is how simple it is. Now, let's check with the other tables. Go over to the estimations part, wherein you can see how much approvals that you actually wanted to achieve in different terms. For example, in 1819, 1920, 2221, 2122, and 2223. So this is more on having an overview of how much approvals you believe that you wanted to achieve. Of course, there will still be discussions regarding this one alongside with the exchangers, but this is more of a good way to be able to expect how much can be the growth of the entity and how much, or even how much the entity was wanted to grow as. Then the table number of approved relative growth is simply calculating the relative growth of the approvals. Then, as again with the estimation, under product pricing part, you can write down the pricing of the different products in different years. So what I did here, 1617 and 1718 have the same pricing. I also did it as the same pricing for 1819 for presentation's sake. Then next is direct cost breakdown. Similarly, just write down the potential direct cost that you might have incurred. Then same goes with indirect costs. You can write down as much indirect cost that you might incur in different years to come. You can calculate this in multiple ways. It can be done like through inflation, or it can be done by just simply reviewing the past few budgets on how they actually increase or decrease. Then direct revenues breakdown is is similar to how it is computed, but for this one, the direct revenues is actually automatic, so it multiplies the product pricing and the number of approvals. So you don't need to write anything here. Then indirect revenues is pretty much just write down the amount that you believe that would be generated in different years to come. Now, once you write those down, you can see on the top part, also it connects with different cash flow. Now, let's talk about the possible different scenarios. If you're going to look at 16, 17, 18, it is always on a positive ending balance, but it's actually losing money, which then eventually in 1920 you lost a lot of money. Then, as an example, it became a positive now here because let's know what actually changed. So you can write down here in the product pricing tab an experiment how much would be the change in pricing for you to be able to get back up from the negative balance. And then from few changes, for example, from 1,500 to 2,000, 1,000 to 1,200, 1,800 to 2,400, 700 to 1,200, and 1,700 to 2,200. So this is a sample. Which then eventually increase the ending balance of 2021. So this of course isn't necessarily the best way on how to this isn't necessarily the best way on how to calculate the pricing. Of course, this is more on being able to do some estimates, but this is for you to be able to know what if you keep on increasing your direct costs and indirect costs and the approvals, but no changes with the pricing. Then in this cash flow table shows that it still drops down because something is wrong with your pricing. And then eventually when the pricing, based on the scenario, when the pricing has been fixed, then it eventually have a higher price, have a higher cumulative profit per year. Now, of course, in this table, there can be multiple cash flows, multiple realities, multiple different scenarios that you can try out. So you can pretty much play along with how can you create different targets for approvals, different changes with pricing, different changes with the direct cost, indirect cost. So this is a good way for you to start thinking long term, but not necessarily doing every specific details in each year. So how can this also be good with budgeting? Because this can be used as a pattern for you to try out doing a long-term budgeting simply based on the potential changes with pricing, potential changes with approvals, potential changes with direct costs, indirect costs, direct revenue, indirect revenue. And then there's one more table in the risk assessment. So let's check what if, based on the calculation of the cash flow that you did, there is actually a risk of 5% in terms of receiving revenue and risk of 10% in terms of incurring more costs. So this would automatically calculate what would be the net profit or net loss under these scenarios of revenue decrease and cost increase. And then there is an ending balance that is also related to the scenario. And then from this, you can check out, okay, you can check out what would be your ending balance if it is risky on these certain terms. And then you can try to compare it with from your uh, original ending balance row. So in this case, for example, if on 1819, even though that on the original time it is still a positive 19,000, but under the risk circumstances it is actually a negative 274. So there is a problem here. And then of course there are more multiple risk scenarios in other terms as well, but assuming that by 1920 or 2021 you were able to change your pricing uh, in the in the higher scenario, or the better scenario, it became a positive ending balance already, but in this risk scenario it is still a negative, but would become a positive ending balance by the next scenario. Yes, so you can use this tool for you to try out multiple versions of a long-term budgeting. You can create a copy of it and modify it. You can use it in different trackers, or you can even use it as a simulation for even training your LCs or training your successor. Or also, you can also use this in terms of your planning tool, because this is a tool related to long-term sustainability. And with that, let's have a final message. So GT needs to be planned and tracked to break even or generate profit. Increase prices of your and of your product, of your entity when necessary. There are multiple ways to price: one-time payment, multi-servicing fee, combination of the two, or multiple installments. IGT is now under the microscope because of the losses compared before, because before it was one of the highest revenue generating products. As you remember, there is a negative 0.2 in terms of IGT level, but before it was a lot higher. And then invest time and energy in the education of your network entities for operations, especially as VPF, to ensure high performance and product budget management. Product profitability cannot be sole responsibility of GT or finance. Also, as product profitability is one of the targets in strategy 5, we need to have a strong synergy between the two departments now more than ever. And with that, I am done with this session. If you have any questions, please fill out the form below. If you have any concerns or feedback, fill it out as well. Give us feedback, give us words, give us questions, give us suggestions. Feel free to voice out what you wanted to ask or to say, and we will reply with a better recommendation from us. And with that, I hope everything will be good. I'm hoping that this education will be very useful for you and very useful for the sustainability of the entity and the product.